Hello everyone guys! We're continuing a series of videos about bushcraft. We have done a lot of things here, cooking the soup and so on. And before we start eating, I decided to make another video for you. In today's video I'll tell you how to choose the right knife for bushcraft, for the forest, you understand. So if you haven't seen my video what bushcraft is, click the link and take a look. It's in the corner of your screen. Now the topic of bushcrafting is very popular, and so many knife makers are starting to make their knives for these forest tasks. All of them are calling their knives bushcrafting knives. But what is the right knife for bushcrafting? We'll analyze this now. So the first criterion we'll discuss: the knife has to be full tang. No partial hidden tangs, no stick tangs, only full tang. It is powerful and reliable, and it is one of the most important criteria. The second criterion is the weight of the knife. It shouldn't be light. It has to be quite a powerful and hefty knife to be able to chop through some small branches from the first strike. Next point, it has to be Scandinavian grind. No secondary bevels, like on this one knife, for example. Yeah, I didn't tell you about this knife yet. It's quite an interesting one by Mark Kuznetsov. This guy makes his knives rarely, and lots of knife fans are chasing them. It's my fortune to have one, but I gave it to my cameraman as a birthday present, so Alex is using it now actively. This knife has a Scandi grind, but it doesn't taper down to zero. There is a secondary bevel of 38 degrees total angle, as Mark said, and it's not so good. A real bushcraft knife should have only one bevel. Such bevels are much easier to sharpen in the field, and the knife stays sharp, quite long, and good for work. The next point, the bevel should start at 1/3 of the blade. If the bevel starts higher, such bevels can become bent. If it starts lower, this knife is not so easy to work with. 1/3 of the blade is the best standard for the bevels. The tip of the blade has to be very powerful, so that you can do some picking and poking and drilling movements. Remember the video where we were trying to make a wooden spoon with the help of a Yakut knife, and the tip of the blade broke? So this should never happen with a bushcraft knife. It should never let you down in any circumstances. The thickness of the spine is 3.5 to 4 millimeters. It cannot be thinner. It has to be a powerful knife for heavy-duty work. The handle, here there can be variations. Some people prefer micarta, others like G10. I'm a fan of stabilized wood. It looks pretty. Yes, it may be not so grippy in the palm, but still, each to their own. I'm against regular wooden handles, which are not stabilized. Why? Because wood is quite a squeamish material, and it's gonna work as a sponge. It's gonna take and release water, and the knife can bend, there can be some wiggle afterwards, and this should never happen with a knife that's meant for serious forest duties. Lanyard. I'm not a very big fan of lanyards, but here I did put it. This one is temporary, made out of paracord. Later on I'll put in a leather one with a nice bead. I'm looking for a nice bead with a bear head to go with our logo, the Berloga channel. Speaking about the lanyard, it's an important point. The lanyard should never be tied here on top. Why? Because if your lanyard is made with a loop, yes, you can put it on your wrist, you can work with it, you can hang like this, but if you're shaving wood in some bushes or somewhere else, the lanyard may get caught on the branch or a twig, your hand will slip to the cutting edge and you'll just lose your fingers. And all your bushcrafting rest will be finished. So no, this lanyard will not work. The right kind of lanyard for bushcrafting knives looks like this. The tie goes like here, and these two strings are just loose. This kind of lanyard will not catch on anything, neither a twig nor a branch. When you start working, you can leave the tie here, work with the knife, you can grab it a little further for some chopping movement, and the lanyard will help you with that. It will let you keep the knife. But if you need to put the knife on your wrist, you'll move it, put it on, and work like this. When you're done working, take the knife out and move the lanyard back. this is the kind of option. Sometimes you can use an option like this. It doesn't move, the tie doesn't move here, but still there is a lanyard, and it's not going to get caught on anything, there's no loop on the end. And still it helps for some chopping movements when you want to grip the knife a little further. And you go on chopping. It's also an option. I'm not a big fan of putting the knife on my wrist, so I just did it for purpose to show you how it looks. Later on I'll make a leather lanyard, some nice bead in the shape of a bear head, and I'm not gonna worry that you need to wear the knife on your wrist. I don't like it, it's not my cup of tea. That's the point about lanyards. Speaking about the steel on the blade, they use various kinds of steel. I prefer high carbon steel. This is D2, German steel. On Mark's knife, it's an American A2, also high carbon steel. This is quite similar to D2. Another good steel is H12MF. These are great kinds of steel which you can use, but there's an important point to make. These knives, these kinds of steel, cannot be tempered to the hardness that people are usually harden it to. Sometimes D2 is hardened to 61, 62 Rockwell units. That's too much. This cutting edge will crumble on you if you're working actively with it. 59, 58 is more than enough. The cutting edge will not chip or break out, break off, and it will keep sharp for quite a long time. And you will be able to fix the knife, sharpen it even in the field with some glass of your car, some leather, some tiny pebble that you find, lots of options. And it's quite easy not to just wet the knife, but sharpen it also. Quite recently I've tried the water Japanese stone for the first time. You just put the knife on the stone, take the angle of sharpening, you just put the knife on the stone with the angle you want, and you start sharpening both sides. There are no problems at all, very easy. Just put it on the right angle and go ahead. Speaking about the sheath, I like leather, you should know that. I'm really tired of kydex and all kinds of stuff, but still kydex is not bad. If you're worrying that leather sheath can be ruined by moisture or whatever, sure, go ahead, use kydex. But still, you need some loose hanging. Tack lock it will not do. If your knife is here, it's very inconvenient to take it out and putting it in. If you're wearing your sheath horizontally, in my opinion, it's also inconvenient. Why? Of course, when Bear Grylls is running around with a knife on his back, it looks really cool. The picture is beautiful. But, yeah, you can take it out. But put it back in, it's unreal. You need to see where you're sticking your knife. Otherwise, it's very inconvenient. Another point, if your clothing is loose and untucked, a short or a jacket, even in the winter, if your knife is horizontally, it's going to be very hard for you to reach it. And if it's vertical, hanging loose, the knife is quite low. You can easily take it out and put it back in. That's why I think the sheath has to be hanging loosely. Whether it's going to be skin or kydex, it's your decision. I'm a fan of leather. It's up to you. Another sheath made out of leather, but it has this kind of attachment to the belt. That's how it gets fastened. In my opinion, it's inconvenient because the knife is quite high. And taking it out, it's not easy. Like if something is untucked, the clothing will cover your knife. If it were a little lower, that would be much more convenient. Here's the solution. The ferro rod. I think it's an important thing and you should have it. A lot of people are saying, why would you need a ferro rod? We're living in a modern world. You can have a lighter, you can have matches, you can always put things on fire. Yeah, but the ferro rod will never get wet. Even if you were swimming with it, you can wipe it with your hand and start making sparks. Quite recently we were in a situation where we were trying to make a fire with matches, and it took much more time than with a ferro rod. Even if your matches didn't get wet, they can get moist and they will never burn. The head of the match will start on fire, but then it goes out immediately. So I keep realizing the more I'm using the ferro rod, the quicker I can start a fire without matches, without a lighter, without anything. So I think you should have a ferro rod. And it's good to have it on your sheath. Very convenient, together with your knife, take it out, make sparks with a knife, very easy. Another point I want to make is, remember in a video where I was comparing the Bear Grylls knife with the beaver knife? No serrators. Serrator is very inconvenient. When you're working in the forest with wood, the knife gets stuck, you cannot do a nice long cut. Serrator is evil for the forest. Absolutely not. Point your attention at is the size of the knife. Some people prefer huge cleavers in the forest. Others like tiny Moras. The length of the blade for a bushcrafting knife is approximately 10-11 centimeters. That's an optimal length for various kinds of tasks. Yes, it may be not so convenient to put down a big tree with it, but you should get an axe if you want to do that. If you have a small knife only, you can use it for, little pieces of wood. This length of blade is optimal. It's easy and it's convenient to use for all kinds of tasks. So if you don't want to measure it, it should be a little wider than your palm without the thumb. Something like that. Another important point about the sharpness. The knife has to be really sharp and you should watch out for it. I know a lot of people who come home from the forest, throw the knife in the car or somewhere into their backpack, and they don't keep it sharp. They do something in the forest, throw it in the backpack or in the car, and then take it out again in the forest. No, guys. If you use a knife for a while, you should check whether it's sharp or not again. You should maintain it always sharp and ready. And another point I want to emphasize, it doesn't matter here what knife you're using for bushcrafting, but it is important that you always have the knife on you. A bushcrafter's knife is the most important tool, so it should either be in your hand when you're doing something, or it should be in the sheath on your belt. Don't throw your knife around, in no case. You can be without a knife when you most need it, and we definitely don't need such adventures. These are the criteria you should bear in mind when choosing a bushcrafting knife. It has to be really reliable and should never let you down in any discomfortable situation. But now, guys, hit the like button, push the subscribe button, and I'm waiting for you in the comments. Please let me know which bushcrafting knives you're using. And if you still don't have a knife for this, please let me know which one you would like to buy. I'd be really interested. Have a good one and see you online.